Welcome to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't, a podcast dedicated to helping you create the relationship you truly want. And now, here's your host, licensed psychotherapist, Rhoda Mills Summer.
Welcome to Fighting Can Improve Your Relationship, episode 53. Learn here how fights can be turned into recovery and intimate conversations. Dan Wile is a clinical psychologist in private practice in Oakland, California, who has written several books for couples. My favorite is the revised edition of After the Honeymoon, How Conflict Can Improve Your Relationship, which offers couples a way out of the negative cycles in arguing. I loved it in your book when you said the heart of a couple relationship is saying what you need to say and feeling that it has gotten across. It is having conversations that work out. Then later on in chapter 5, you go on to say, people start acting crazy, confused, offensive, and in desperate ways when they are unable to say important things they need to say, which I totally agree with. You consider it a major principle whenever you find yourself feeling less satisfied with, less in love with, less turned on by, more walled off from, more bored with your partner. Look for the feelings, wishes, worries, or complaints that you are not sharing. So Dan, could you explain more about this major principle, because it seems so true in my own experiences with couples?
Okay, the idea of look for the feelings, wishes, worries, or complaint that you're not sharing is based on my belief about what emotional intimacy is, which is saying the main thing on your mind and feeling your partner understands, and your partner doing the same. And you feel connected when that happens.
Yes.
And what happens when you're unable to say this main thing on your mind? Well, that's when all these difficulties occur. Now, here's an example that I use in my workshop. Jack overhears Jill talking on the phone with her friend Emma. Now, if Jack could say the main thing on his mind, he'd say, "You seemed so excited and happy talking with Emma just now. It made me think about how we used to be, and I really miss it." But let's say he's not the kind of person who feels comfortable saying such things, and actually maybe most people aren't. So he's left to keep his mouth shut. He becomes walled off. That's where the walled off comes in, and finds himself feeling some of the things you mentioned, more bored, less satisfied with, less turned on by Jill. He's in withdrawal mode, which is two of the main modes that people get into when they can't say what they need to say. The other mode is attack mode, which he could be in if he were to, at some point, march up to Jill and say, "Was that Emma again? Why don't you just move in with her?" With a burst of anger breaking through. All right, so when you find yourself in withdrawal mode or attack mode, which means all these negative things are happening, you can use that as a clue that there's something you're suffering from being unable to confide to your partners. And I put a lot of stock in the word confide. And you can work back and try to figure out what it is that you would have needed to confide.
I think that is such a pearl of wisdom and can be so helpful to so many people. You talk about how easy it is to be boring because we talk about events and we don't include our feelings. And I thought that was a really interesting distinction to make. Could you tell my audience how to go about changing this to work even better in their own relationships?
Well, let's use the example of partners doing their day,
Yes.
which becomes problematic when there's a mismatch. So Joe likes to talk about the cars he's working on at the garage, his job. Now, if Brenda were interested in that, it would be fine. She's more interested in hearing how he feels about what he's doing and what happens between him and the other people, the co-workers, boss, and customers. And she gets bored hearing too much about carburetors. So what can they do? Well, the obvious thing is, to whatever extent possible, they can try to shift in the other's direction. Hearing what Jill wants, Jack might be able to say a little more about his feelings and could possibly develop a taste for it as the years went on. That's what you'd hope for. And over time, Jill might develop a little more interest in cars. But better yet, and since these things might not happen, so what I really count on is they're establishing an ongoing dialogue about this issue, where they kind of know it about the other, maybe even develop a sense of humor about it. He may start talking about something in the cars, and then he'll catch himself halfway through. He'll catch himself halfway through, and say, "Oh, I'm probably saying more than you're interested in," and she'll really appreciate that.
Oh, that's elegant. Yeah.
So it'd be something. That would be a lifelong process, and it could be improving all the time about making it. That people do have unsolvable problems. Every
Yes.
couple has its own set of unsolvable problems, and this may be one for this couple.
I think it's a great example because I hear this issue so many times. You talk about the skill of prefacing. I've always told my own couples it's an act of elegance to do this. Could you explain what it means?
Well, that's lovely. Prefacing is an act of elegance. And whenever partners in my office spontaneously do it, I'm very impressed, and I tell them.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of launching into something that's iffy, something that might offend your partner, you preface it. That's, of course, what you mean. You express, by that I mean you express your concern about how your partner might hear it, or say how you'd like your partner to hear it. You might say, "I know this might be defensive. I know this might sound critical." Or something like just giving instruction. I'm upset, so I just want you to listen and not give advice. All useful things to keep a conversation going in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely.
So before telling Brenda the details of how he fixed a really messed up carburetor, Joe could tell Brenda why he wants to talk about it. He could preface what he's going to say with, "I want to tell you about the car I fixed up today because I'm really proud of it. I saved the guy $2,000. Everyone was real impressed." Now that part, Brenda would be interested in. And then he could go on and talk a little bit about what he did.
Couples get stuck when they are unable to say what they need to say. One pattern that we all experience getting stuck in is to fight or withdraw from each other. I love this idea that arguing can be different than fighting or withdrawal, because we all know that expressing anger or suppressing anger both can get us into trouble. So what can partners do instead of this? And you've mentioned it earlier.
Okay, well, that's everyone's big problem, mine too. Say you've got this resentment. Do you express it or stuff it? Well, some people always express it, some people always stuff it, and most people do something, sometimes one, sometimes the other. And as you said, both have their disadvantages. One starts a fight, and the other one causes a kind of withdrawal. There are some things you don't want to say, things that are hurtful, you can't take back, and your partner is going to remember forever. But there's a whole bunch of other things that aren't hurtful in that way, but still might upset your partner. So that's what we're talking about. So my wife, Dorothy, has a good way of handling this. She says, if it's something that I think won't bother me in 20 minutes, I won't bring it up. In other words, she thinks she can suppress it without its having the usual effects that suppression has, where you kind of mull over it in your mind and it builds up over time. Now, what I do is wait until I calm down when I might be able to think of a way of expressing what I'm feeling to Dorothy that she can hear. And that'd be usually by stepping back and reporting. I kind of would say, I got angry at you this morning when you said such and such. Did you know that? All right, now that's said in a gentle, non-angry way, and we could have a discussion about it when you do that.
Which makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. You say the problem isn't fighting. It's getting back into a fight without knowing why. So how do you figure out the why?
Well, now, if you don't know that you're saying something provocative, then you're stuck taking your partner's angry or defensive response as meaning that they're overly sensitive, they get upset over nothing, and there's no way to talk with them. So when it's advantage to know that you said something provocative so you can understand and make sense to you why your partner is getting upset. As for figuring out afterwards with your partner how you got back into the fight, say you had a fight and then you made peace, but then you, in talking about it, got back into the fight, you can talk with them afterwards when both of you calm down, that's always important, and figure out together what happened. You could say, well, now, at what point what did I say that got you upset with me again? Or here's what you said that got me upset about it. And if you're talking about it in a calm way with a gentle tone of voice, rather than as in the middle of an argument, you can figure out together what happened.
I really like that. I think that makes a lot of sense. If people can, and I like how you keep mentioning the calming down, because I think that's really important. Your message is that talking in a self-revealing way really is what can change these stuck patterns of fighting. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. There's something disarming about saying something vulnerable, heartfelt, soft, and in a gentle tone of voice. There we go.
Yeah.
It often immediately shifts, the two big dangers in a couple relationship, which is fighting or withdrawing. That's what takes its toll. It can immediately shift those things to intimate talking. If you were to say, I feel lonely when we fight like this with that gentle tone of voice, and you're not continuing the fight, you're just saying how you're feeling, and now you hope your partner will respond with something like, well, I feel lonely too, and also in a gentle tone of voice. Of course, it doesn't always happen that way. I mean, you've got to prepare for things that you reach out with not working out. That partner might say to your, I feel lonely when we fight. Your partner might say, well, then why do you act the way you do? Well, okay, you're still in the fight then, if that's the way your partner responds.
Yeah. What helps partners to be more self-revealing and vulnerable, especially if they're not self-aware?
Well, of course, you can't be self-revealing if there's nothing for you to reveal because you don't know what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Now, what you're left with in that case is to be self-revealing about that fact.
Ah.
Now, not that that's easy to do.
No. Yeah.
But here you can say, here's things you can say. You could say something like, I worry I'm letting you down because I know you're not talking. I know I'm not talking in a very engaging way. All right, now, it takes a great presence of mind to say that, but that it is something that is potentially available. Or, is this one of those times that you feel lonely because I'm not talking more about my feelings?
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
as you can see, these are hard things to imagine anyone saying, but they are possible.
Yes.
If you're not knowing what you're feeling.
I've thought a lot about how fantasy can impact relationships. And since I think a lot about opposites or polarities, I was surprised to learn about what you call bypassing or non-bypassing, that I will relabel fantasy or reality hyperdrive. Could you explain to my listeners how being overdosed in either fantasy or reality the bypassing or non-bypassing, can contribute to fighting problems?
Well, I like that way of thinking about it. Fantasy or what is it? Reality
Reality
hyperdrive.
hyperdrive. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. All right. Now, the way I like to think about it is the problem comes up when the partners differ on that. Because if both go into reality hyperdrive, there's no problem. And if both go off into fantasy, there's no problem, except they might start doing things that are, that's another issue. Now, so the problem comes up when, say, one partner likes to play with possibilities, dream up wonderful vacations, imagine living in different places or taking a trip around the world. Not necessarily planning to do it, but just playing with the idea, and then once in a while trying one of those things. And the other is, as you say, steeped in reality and doesn't see the sense of talking about possibility if you're not going to do them. So the first partner's fantasizing makes the second partner nervous, and the second partner's sticking to reality is a big downer for the first partner.
Yeah.
So here's another possibly unresolvable problem. In a way, I like to start with that. And then quickly acknowledge again that every relationship has its own unsolvable problems that the partners are going to be coping with for the rest of the relationship. You just hope that the problem isn't a deal breaker. So here there's a way that they can have an ongoing conversation about this issue and maybe even have talk about it in a kind of a relaxed, funny way at some point. Usually helpful if the person makes a kind of comment on their own reaction, like saying, well, I'm probably ruining your plan for, this wonderful vacation by pointing out all the negative things in my usual way. Well, the partner's going to like that, and she wouldn't have to say it because he's saying it.
Yeah. Or the other one says, I know I'm crunching in on your possibilities by being practical.
That's even better.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciated that because I just, that distinction again, I think a lot of therapy is about making distinctions and really thinking about the complicatedness of two opposites and how they bang into each other.
Yeah.
We all emphasize compromise as part of relationships. I love the idea of tilting the value of compromise 360 degrees by recognizing how hidden compromises can be a gamble. Could you explain this for those who follow my podcast?
All right. Well, let me talk about the gamble first and then the hidden compromise the second. And as far as the gamble goes, people differ in how much they can put aside what they want and do what their partner wants, and to do it comfortably, magnanimously, and without losing their spirit. Now, some people just do it easily. They just get caught up in the fact that they're doing something their partner enjoys, and they'll go to an opera when they don't want to go to an opera, or a baseball game if they don't want to go to a baseball game. There's other people that, I'm one of them, I've got to admit, that don't do it comfortably, that get really bored or irritated or get quiet when I try to do something that Dorothy wants, but I really don't want. So that's what I mean by it's a gamble, because whenever you try that, is it going to work? And so you're both happy you did it, or is it going to cause more problems than it's worth? Now, as for the hidden compromises, let's say that Jane gets what seems on the outside to be unreasonably upset because her wife, Carol, canceled a planned evening because she needed to visit her mother in the hospital. And it looks like she's just uncompromising. She had the mother's in the hospital, for heaven's sake. But the reason Jane got so upset is that she already made too many compromises. She'd been making all the meals when she didn't want to, and usually they hadn't been the way they'd done it because of the mother's sickness. She'd agreed to their not taking a vacation or going away for the weekend. So Jane's canceling the evening out was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that is a very common issue. And I really appreciated thinking about hidden compromises. When you describe selfishness as a term that brings an end to useful thinking, I laughed out loud with delight. I really did when I was looking at your book. There really are so many terms that stop us dead in our tracks. I often flip the word selfish to self protective to make it easier to digest for my clients. But I'd like you to talk about selfishness that stops an end to useful thinking.
Yeah, you're selfish is the prime example of a term that when you use it, it's at once an indictment and conviction. There's no
Yes.
way to defend yourself against it. You're tarred. Um, it's name calling of a particularly insidious kind because the name caller doesn't see it as name calling. They think they're just saying what's true.
That's right.
That's what's well, I already said insidious about this. And there's a more general point, which is that I'm getting at here, which is how easy it is to become accusatory without knowing it.
Yes, that's so true. Yes. One of my favorite sentences in your book: couple life is a succession of half experienced, half stated, half fulfilled, easily lost, and quickly forgotten fantasies. Then you go on to recommend skillfully tracking down fantasy wishes. Why and how do couples go about this?
Well, I'm glad you liked that sentence. This was a while ago, but I think I spent a lot of time trying to come up with it. Now, okay, the main idea here is that all kinds of thoughts, feelings, memories, and images continuously pass through our minds. Something happens that reminds us of something that happened long ago that was frustrating, which gets us thinking about what's frustrating at the moment with our partner. Say there's a rough patch with your husband, which gets you thinking of a previous boyfriend with whom there wasn't that problem, which gets you wondering what that boyfriend is doing now. I mean, that's the way thoughts go.
That's true. Absolutely. I especially enjoyed these two potential points of sharing based on fantasies as possible. And the first, I've been thinking again about that affair you had 10 years ago. So it must mean I'm feeling ignored by you. Or the second, I've been thinking about my former boyfriend. So it must mean that I'm feeling taken for granted. I can so easily imagine the improvements that could emerge from this deeper level of authenticity. They really grabbed me, those sentences.
Yeah, well, I've been doing a lot of thinking about those issues since that time. And so let me the two examples say different things. So let me start with the first. I've been thinking again about that affair you had 10 years ago, so it must mean I'm feeling ignored by you. All right, now there's a problem, a potential problem here, because if you stopped after saying the first part, I've been thinking again about that affair you had 10 years ago, your partner's going to think, am I never going to live that down? So the second part is crucial. So it must mean I'm feeling ignored by you, because it tells your partner that your point isn't to bring up that affair again. You're using it to inform you about something that's going on now. I'm feeling ignored by you, which, if you say it in a gentle way, might be something the other partner could respond to positively. That also could be an accusation, of course. And if you have a kind of relationship where it's seen as a good thing to bring in those kind of feelings, this could really promote a sense of intimacy at that moment. All right, now the second example is tricky. I've been thinking about my former boyfriend, so it must mean that I'm feeling taken for granted. What's crucial here is the kind of person your partner is and the kind of understanding you have about talking about those things. Because some people might not even hear anything past that I've been thinking about my former
That's
boyfriend.
true. Yes, you're right.
So it's so you don't want to say it. You got to know your customer.
Yeah.
You can say it usefully if you, as I said, if you have the kind of relationship in which your partner can immediately see what your point is and welcomes it, can hear it without feeling threatened.
That's absolutely true. My final question, what last words of wisdom about fighting in relationships would you like to tattoo on my listeners' brains to help them going forward?
One of the things that I talk about people, couples that I'm seeing, is that whenever they make an acknowledgement rather than an accusation, an acknowledgement meaning, you've got a point there. I'll have to think about that. Or, I think I came on overly strong about that. That's so crucial in turning a fight or other type of unfortunate exchange with your partner into a nice, warm exchange. All right, so it was Dorothy who pointed out to me how crucial the concept of acknowledgement is in my whole approach. So that's what I want to etch in people's minds. When you've calmed down enough after a fight or a difficult situation, so that you can come to your partner with good news, that is, with an acknowledgement rather than trying once again to make your point, then that's when it's wise to come to your partner. Otherwise, you just start to fight again. Your hope, of course, is your partner will respond in kind with an acknowledgement of their own, and you get a positive cycle going, which is what you really want in a relationship, a positive cycle where each person says something conciliatory or warm or loving in response to the other doing the same, instead of the negative cycle where each person says something angry or defensive in response to the other doing the same.
Yes, I so appreciate you agreeing to be interviewed today, Dan. Thank you so much for your time and the work that you do to help couples. Audience, go out and buy his book, After the Honeymoon, and improve your fighting. And will you think for a moment about who you know that would enjoy this podcast? What are they doing right now? If you told them to try this show, would they do it? Would you mind pausing this for a bit and sending them a quick message about what healthy couples know that you don't? The podcast is now an app on Apple phones under Relationship Advice and on Android under Healthy Couples. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to What Healthy Couples Know That You Don't. If you have enjoyed the show, please leave a rating and review on iTunes and help get the word out. To learn more or connect with Rhoda, visit therapyideas.net.